Okay, so this is really ironic. It's kind of funny because, as you know, we've talked to Riki Ellison from time to time, and we always talk about football. We always talk about the game. There is and by the way, even though he's a 49er, we should actually call him a globetrotter because he's been doing some serious traveling. Here today and gone tomorrow. He's right now on the West Coast, so at least we have a chance to talk to him. But he had some very, very interesting meetings last night and again today. They championed and recognized the new ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee, Rep. Doug Lamborn, in his home district of Colorado Springs, where I think, Ricky, I know we got a lot to cover, but you said it was like 1 degree there. That's pretty cold. How'd you stay warm anyway? Hello, Ricky. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, there's some.
Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you too, but there's some other strange noise in the background. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm in L.A.
Yeah. Well, my question to start the ball off with, you were just in Colorado Springs, and it was it was 1 degree. How did you keep warm?
It was 1 degree. It was 26 degrees below.
Oh my goodness!
It was a wind chill of 26 below, man. It was 6 degrees this morning when I left. Thank God I'm in L.A. right now.
Yeah, cool.
Boy,
warming up.
That is cold weather, man. You can't, when you breathe, it hurts.
It might be cold weather, my friend, but we need to talk about how it's ramping up, and it's pretty hot in some parts of the world right now, and everybody's sitting on the edge of this Ukraine thing. And let's talk about how important things are, and what can you share about what do they have to be able to repel the rocket attacks that they're going to get.
Well, it's just a difficult situation right now, and it's at 2 or 3 decisions that it could be a world war. 2 or 3 bad decisions, it could be a nuclear war. That's where we're at right now, and the issue is we don't have the deterrence to stop him at this point, and that's what's frustrating to see and watch. And, hopefully we're able to unify and create punishment for him without going to war to back him off. But right now, we don't have that.
Ricky, everybody asks the same thing, and I do know that you talk to the cream of the cream all the time. This is not territorial. It's not about languages. I think it's about resources. I think that Putin wants what the Ukraine has, and it's not their people. It's their stuff. What do you hear? What do you hear? Why is this even happening?
I don't know. I don't think it's the resources because he's going to hurt everybody. If this happens, the oil prices are going to go up everywhere, and I think China's going to get hurt the most. Europeans are going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt from that. This is more of a fundamental philosophy position, certainly trying to break up NATO. That's one strategy that's certainly apparent on it. Certainly to look at, having heroism for himself as a legacy to reunify Russia after they got beat by us in the Cold War. I don't think Ukraine is not worth the cost that he's taken, but he thinks it is. And he's seen the crumbling. He's seen the weakness of our Western civilization being able to unify against him.
Do you think, Ricky, in some respects, it's drawn us closer to some of our allies?
Well, I think this is a wake-up call. I mean, more than a wake-up call. I think the benefit out of this whole thing is they're going to rely on the U.S. as the backbone of NATO, and they're going to increase their defense capabilities. There's no question that they are now understanding the threat they have on their hands, and they are under-defended, and that will be certain. And certainly missile defense is going to be a big factor. He's got depths of rows, with the ability to throw 200 cruise missiles and ballistic missiles in the first salvo shot, and they're undefended. And
that was the primary reason why I really tried as hard as I could to set you up for today, because I think that what we don't understand is I don't care what you do at this point. There's just so much armament now on 3 sides of Ukraine. When you take a look at this buildup of equipment and personnel and stuff, is how in the world can that country, remain, not get just slain. I mean, it just looks like so much firepower against a little guy.
Yeah, but again, it's 200,000 Russian soldiers versus 43 million people. Let's get that right.
Yeah.
They will take Kiev quickly. They can do that. but it's whether the Ukrainians stand up and fight and have a guerrilla warfare. That's the issue. And if that does happen, I think, we certainly in the West will be supporting that guerrilla warfare as a wear and tear on that. But again, they're not NATO. They're not tied to us in any type of treaty or obligation. But this is a Western civilization position here of, when someone breaks the international rules of crossing borders, our strategic deterrence is not working today. So we have to rethink that deterrent. And that's an integrated deterrent.
I should say.
And for us, and Mike, Russia's got the economy of California. It's not China. And China's watching this.
Yeah, by the way, I really need to ask you that. I really need to ask you that because, as you know, we got RIMPAC coming up. And I do know what a big, and also we had this big thing at Barking Sands, a whole lot of great things going on. And it to me is like we've shifted ourselves from looking what's going on in our own theater and looking what's going on over there. And China apparently has also been at least feigning that they're talking to Putin and telling him to settle down a little bit because they don't want to go to war either, I don't think.
Well, it's just amazing, right? When we start getting focused on in the Indo-Pacific and getting our resources and our troops and our ability, soft and hard power to deter China, this comes up and sucks up the attention and the resources back to Europe on it. China's going to see what the punishment is by the Western civilization on Russia. They're watching that punishment. And if that punishment is not valid enough, they're going to reunify like Russia's trying to reunify with Ukraine. They're going to reunify Taiwan. So this is much bigger than the Ukraine aspect of it. It has much bigger, broader implications for our ability to be a national security.
Has it been seen coming by our leaders? I mean, I'm not just talking about the administration and the president. I'm talking about Department of Defense, all the services. I mean, they must be singing different songs to each other than we'll ever hear. They must be a little bit more concerned and nervous about this than we are.
Absolutely. They're working all the other tools, but, we won that war against Soviet Union by, peace through strength, by strength. Mm-hmm. And we've eroded our defenses. We've eroded our intent and our defenses. And our alliances have not been militarily strong. And he's taking advantage of that. He's calling us out.
Yeah, that's where I'm getting at. And, I'm not sure that we have somebody with the same amount of strength on the other end of it. I mean, there's been a lot of things said about President Trump. What would he have done? What President Biden is doing or is not doing? We don't have too much room for error here, do we? I mean, if we're going to
but it is what sanctions, it is. We got a president. We got to play with we got a president. We're playing with him. Mm-hmm. We got to play the best we got with the cards that we have and the forces we've got. And we've got to de-escalate this thing. We've got to make sure it does not cross into NATO, that we don't have any border incidences where this escalates into a world war. That's the number one thing we're doing. And we're making sure we're putting all our forces forward on our NATO countries to make sure the Russians understand this is a no-go if you cross that line. That's that part of it. And then now you've got to, you got to sanction him or you got to punish him the hardest you can do for him doing what he's doing right now. And that's, and we've got to keep those 30 NATO nations together. And he's going to be chipping at them because he's also looking at the way to break NATO. This is what, I think this is one of his biggest strategies by doing this is breaking NATO.
Okay, we got Riki Ellison, the founder and executive director, CEO of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance. When we come back, my question for Riki is going to be, all right, is Putin going to be able to keep all of his people together, or are they going to have to stand up and defy their own leader? We'll find out that. But first, let's take a fast look at traffic with Malin Moore.
Have you got a question? Want the answer? It's right here and right now. Here's more of the Mike Buck Show on AM 690 and FM 94.3. The Answer.
Okay, so what we were talking about just before the break there is yesterday Riki was in Colorado Springs. It was really cold, but it warmed up because we championed and recognized the new ranking member of the House Armed Services Strategic Forces Subcommittee, and that's Doug Lambert in Colorado Springs. And it was the 37th Congressional Roundtable, the future of space and missile defense. And I bet you, Ricky, that somehow intertwined with all of that stuff was everybody saying, okay, how do we keep an eye on that one, and how do we deal with this Ukraine situation at the same time? By the way, we just did find out a minute ago that Ukraine has declared themselves to be in a state of emergency among these tensions, I would guess. So how much of the time was divided between saying, okay, we're going really well over here, but we really have to take a look over there and hope that Putin does buckle under? And one more fast one. I know it's a long question. The president did announce sanctions against Nord Stream 2, the owner. And this is when you're talking about banks imposing sanctions on the owner of the and this is of the pipeline connecting Russia and Germany. So between banks and the pipeline, that would have to get Putin and everybody else around him nervous, you would think.
Yeah, but I'm going to go back to, this is about NORTHCOM. This is about our homeland, because if we can't defend our homeland, and I believe we are at one of our highest states of a nuclear posture alert that we've been since the 1950s. Russia has submarines up in the Arctic, ballistic nuclear submarines opened up, ready to go, to deter us from intervening in this fight. And that is critically, important. I don't think the population understands how close we are to this kind of Cuban Missile Crisis in Europe that's happening.
Well, and that's why I said the powers that be must be shaking their boots to the point that say that you don't want to put the civilization into a panic. You don't want the non-military parts of our country waiting for the military to help them if they don't believe that we've got enough help there. That's the big problem.
And it's a face-off, just like Kennedy did back to Khrushchev. Just like Reagan did to Gorbachev. It is Biden and Putin, eye to eye. They're looking at each other. They're calling each other out on this. And yes, that pipeline, we needed to cut that off. But Germany's got to step up. Germany's the richest country in Europe, and it's got to make a choice. And these choices are difficult because the populations of Europe are going to suffer the economic pain of increased pricing. Just like, we do if we boycotted China's products, increased pricing. And that's playing into the factor of it as well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of our listeners don't understand already fuel in other parts, in Europe and other parts of the world, we think is horrible. It's terrible. I mean, and if it gets worse, commerce and everything else comes to a standstill because people can't afford to put fuel in their vehicles.
And that's what's going to exactly happen to everybody. It's not just going to be Russia that hurts. All of us are going to hurt because of this.
Yeah, so Ricky, we try to be optimistic here, and we try to say, all right, what is the fix? Well, there's no quick fix to this, but you have to have steely nerves, right? Don't we as a people have to tell? Fix. Don't we have to tell our leader, look, you have to be strong for us. We need you to be strong here.
Yeah. But the quick fix is appeasement, right? That's what's been going on too. That's diplomacy and appeasing them not to go any further by offering them things. Now we're putting the sanctions on them. They're too far forward. Look at what he's invested in being able to put those troops in all that from the east. I mean, he spent a lot of political capital, a lot of Russian to be in position. He's not going to back off unless he gets. There's no way he's backing off.
Hey, how about this? How about this? They're telling us they're pulling people back, and in fact, the surveillance all show they're putting people forward. I mean, they say
we're exposing them on what they're actually doing. So they're going through that process, and we got to unfold it, and we've got to see what that punishment is, and we've got to keep punishing them without going to war as hard as we can to see if we can deter them from their further aggression. And if we let them do this, I mean, the Baltic states are next. The Baltic states are next. And then you get down to Poland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the one. That's what you said is reunited. The broken part of the once invincible Soviet Union that got scattered to the winds. It's got nothing to do with being their sovereignty. What it's got to do is they've lost their control and they want it back, and they're trying to do it this way, and it's kind of working in some respects.
Yeah, and the answer is just like a Hitler. It's Putin. Do you eliminate Putin? I mean, just think through this a little bit. I don't think it's the Russian people that want to do this.
No, that they don't. As a matter of fact, I saw some neat video last night on BBC, and they were talking to Ukrainians that just say, we have to leave here because these people are going to kill us. We're in the way of these people. These people want to fight, and we don't.
And this is Western civilization. We're talking about if they do that missile attack that they're set up to do. That could be tens of thousands of people dying a day. We haven't done that since World War II. World War II, there were 50,000 people a day that died, civilian and military, died a day. I thought we've gone beyond this. This is at a state, if they do what they're looking like they can do with their missile attack on both cruise and ballistic, this is the kind of damage we're dealing with. I thought as a society, we've gone beyond that.
Well, let me ask you this. Because I think this is important. Let me ask you this. We have a time constraint coming up here, and that is simply that we are so far removed from that. I don't think we've had the real reality dose that Europe has had. I don't think that we've seen anywhere near the problems because we've just been so peaceful and so far away for so long.
No, we got two oceans, Mike. We got two oceans separating us from that. That's real. And it's the same thing. We're going to get drawn in there at some point. It's going to be a European fight. But all of a sudden, we're going to have to come back in because they're not ready. They were not prepared enough to deter Russia. They've got to increase their capabilities of deterrence. And that's military as well as it is, diplomacy and economics.
We know that
they have not invested that.
We know, Ricky, that a lot of times you really have no idea about the underground. You really have no idea against the patriotic, members of a country or a family. How many people are really going to bear arms? How many people are going to say, this is my fight. We have to do this right on the ground where it's happening. We can't wait for help.
And I think that's what NATO is waiting to see if Ukraine will fight. If they don't fight, like Afghanistan, why go in and support them? But if they fight, I think we certainly, as a Western civilization, will support those rebels and the Ukraine population.
Well, that's the thing, Ricky. They're giving guns to kids. I mean, I've seen some video that right now you've seen 13, 14, 15-year-old kids getting Kalashnikovs, getting weapons.
But that's not going to matter. I mean, they're going to take the capital. They're going to instill their government in and they're going to run it as a puppet state. And they probably won't. They don't need to take every single family. He's a smart guy. You've seen what he's doing, peacekeeping. So it's going to be a different aspect to it. But if that does, I certainly believe we will source and fund the Ukraine population if they stand up and want to fight.
And you know what? Everybody that I've talked to is comfortable with that. Whether when you don't want to put boots on the ground and be the prong of the saber for NATO ourselves all the time, like we have been, when we want to say, hey, look, we've got stuff. Here's a lot of stuff. And we'll help you. You come across the border, and we'll help you. We'll give you stuff to go back and fight your fight.
But let me ask you this: what's ridiculous is they don't have any missile defense capability at all.
At all.
So and Russia's got 2 deep, 3 deep, 4 deep Islander missiles, and they can rain on that. And what's even more scarier, Mike, is we don't have the ability to defend any of the biggest bases in Europe are undefended by that threat that the Russians are showing today. There's zero defense. Zero. Mike, zero.
Yeah, that is.
So we got to get our
spooky
stuff
looking
together, man. You got to have a defensive capability to defend your population and your projection force forward.
Okay,
we didn't invest in it.
In your opinion,
we're zeroed out.
That's so. In your opinion, as a parting comment, I know that you're very much like me. We're optimists and we're patriots, and we want things to work out well. But we have to face the reality of it. We may all have to give up a little bit more than we want to even if it's in the form of making sure these sanctions, even if they hurt us, which they will, that they still take place, because that's one of the most diplomatic and best ways to handle this, with finances, not bullets.
Right, and we're gonna have to suffer because all the inflation is going to go up. The cost of all our products is going to go up because of this, and we're going to have to stay that way with it. But we certainly going to expect our European allies to pick up the pace, increase their defense spending, and have capability in there, so we don't have to spend on it. They've slept on the job. When we beat the Soviet Union, they reduced all the defense budgets and let the U.S. handle and be responsible for their defense. And it's not, we can't do it. We got too much other stuff in the world to do.
We're busy enough. Have you, by the way, taken a look at the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah. They're a rich country.
Yeah.
They're a rich country.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't understand how many billionaires there are in Russia. You think, oh no, they're not all communists that get a loaf of bread and some beets. They got money in Russia, and lots of it.
Well, and that's why I think we got to hit them hard too with all those guys. All those guys need to be punished too. His whole oligarchy, all the corruption over there needs to be punished. Shut the banks down. All of that.
I'm glad you're no longer in 26 degrees below weather. I don't think we couldn't have this conversation last night, man. You would have been too angry and too cold. Anyway, my friend.
That's our center. That's the center of our country's security, right there in Colorado Springs. By the way,
I know, and that's just great.
Northcom NORAD.
And he saw, and that this guy Doug Lamborn sounds like the real deal.
Yeah, he's going to lead, and if that. He's the ranking member, and it looks like that House may change, and he'll be the chairman of that just most critical subcommittee in Congress, which is nuclear posture, missile defense, and the sword deterrent. So that was good. Important for us to recognize him.
Okay, so the big final question: when you're coming back over here, you got to thaw out a little bit. What's happening with the YIP? What's going on?
I was close to coming back there next week, but I have to go to the Middle East. So I'm going to be in the Middle East next week instead of Hawaii.
Travel safe, my friend.
That's a little change.
Travel safe. We'll talk to you very soon.
Okay.
Aloha. There you go. Riki Ellison. Well, I'm telling you, Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance. Check it out. You just put Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance and Google it and see what happens. It's fantastic. 5:34. More coming up right after Maylin Moore and traffic on The Answer.